John Maxwell has impacted more leaders than anyone alive, and that certainly has been the case with me personally. Few have had the impact on me like John has. John has written over 100 books, which have sold over 30 million copies. He's the founder of the John Maxwell Company, the John Maxwell Team, and his nonprofit called Equip, which I have the privilege of serving on the board of, that has trained over 5 million Christian leaders in 180 different countries. He has been named the #1 leadership and management expert in the world by Inc. magazine and many others. And today, he's here on the Grow Leader podcast. Well, welcome today to the Grow Leader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. I'm Chris Hodges, and I'm so thrilled that you've joined us today for this episode. And it's going to be so special as we spend time with the one and only John Maxwell. In fact, you're going to want to get a pen and paper out. And if you're much younger than me, you'll probably want to get your phone out and take some notes. And by the way, when you rate or review this podcast, I want you to know it really means a lot to me. So thank you for doing that. And if this content is helpful to you, please share it with others on your social media platforms and help us get the word out. Again, it really means a whole lot to me. So just subscribe to the podcast wherever you consume content. And as always, we will have show notes that you can download at our website, growleader.com. And let me give a huge shout out to our sponsors at the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Miner. And Matt, tell them a little bit more about the Wesleyan Investment Foundation.
We are super grateful for WIF Online. For 74 years, they have served churches and faith-based organizations on the lending side and also on the loan side for those that need to borrow money for their projects. And what I love about them is that for 74 years, they've never once defaulted on a loan.
That's right.
So we believe in them at Church of the Highlands. ARC churches alone, over $130 million has been borrowed from WIF Online. So check them out. They're an amazing partner to have.
That makes them our best friends. Seriously, we so appreciate WIF. We have our money on deposit there. And,
Sure.
And we also have churches that we are investing in and believing in that they're giving loans to. When banks are saying no, they say yes.
That's right.
So we really love them. Check them out at wifonline.com. I'm with my buddy, man. I'm with... I thought a lot, John, of how I would just introduce people to you, and people know you, and seriously, no one has had a greater impact in my entire life than you, and I just can't be more delighted to have you here in this new year, to have the audience at Grow Leader Podcast have this conversation with you. So say hi to everyone.
Well, hi. I'm so delighted to be with all of you. And you have to understand, Chris and I are just great friends. I so greatly respect, Chris, your giftedness in leadership and your commitment to God, and your humility, I think, allows you to be greatly used by God, and your ability and your gifts allows you to be used incredibly by God. And so to be with you and Matt and to be with all of your people on the podcast, I'm glad to be here. And thanks for having me. And let's help some people and let's have some fun. And let's try to make a difference in their lives.
Well, a lot of people know that you're very involved with Grow. You are the only guest speaker that we have every year, and you're not even a guest speaker.
No,
a lot of people don't even know this. I thought it'd be fun to tell them that before there was the Grow conference, there was a conference that you started called Breaking Barriers, and really the concept of helping churches reach their full potential was in you. And so people don't know this. A lot of people only see you as the leadership author, leadership speaker, and really the work you do in the business community and around the world. But you were a pastor.
Yes.
And you had a conference to help churches break barriers long before there was a Grow. Tell them about it.
I was pastor for 25 years, as you know, Chris. And I was, because I'm old, okay, I was really kind of a pioneer in conferences. And it seems really weird now, but I mean, back then I was a pioneer. I mean, we didn't have podcasts, but I did cassette tapes and, had, monthly cassette programs where they could, get my leadership stuff. And I did conferences, and you came to some of them as a very young pastor yourself. Right. And remember I did a lay ministry conference where we empowered pastors to empower people. I mean, this was unheard of. I mean, this was like
No, it really was.
We were the only game in town, so we did really well because no one else was yet doing it. But most of the leadership stuff that people know me for today was really birthed in my time as a pastor, because when I started off, I was just trying, Chris, to help pastors learn how to lead well, because they were trained in theology, but they really weren't trained in developing and building a church. And so, that's kind of how I got started. This is what I love. I started this, and it was good in its day. In fact, it was kind of the only game in town in its day. But Chris then took the things that I did. You love to equip people. You love empowerment. You and I are very similar in the fact that we really want to release people to be their very best. But what you have done, like with Grow conferences and you have just taken what I did, and you have just taken it to a whole new level. You have more people in your restrooms in your conferences than I had in my conferences. But somebody has to start.
Right.
And I don't think there's any greater joy than when you start something and it works, then you find somebody like yourself, and then you really complement it and build off of it, and it really works. And so I kind of always have felt, we're very close, but I've always kind of felt like I was kind of like, we were a 1-2 punch, and I kind of started, and then you just grabbed hold of it and took it to a whole new level, Chris, and that's fun, isn't it?
Which, by the way, this past year at our conference in 2021, your message was the best that you have ever delivered at our conference, and the demand. We kind of, if you weren't there, you don't get it, kind of a deal. So, we do that on purpose. So, if you weren't there, well, too bad. But the demand has been so high for that message. I'm announcing today that we're going to provide this month, this is February 2022, that we're going to give them as bonus material this month the message that you gave at the conference in 2021.
I love that, because you don't do that.
I don't do that.
You do that that's for your registered people. You've always kept it exclusive to that. But I'll tell you what's interesting, Chris. As I've traveled since that Grow conference, every conference I go to, I have leaders come up to me and say, "You preached a message," and it's kind of traveled out that it happened.
That's right.
And I say, "Well, yeah, I did." And of course, I know usually you don't even give it out. So for you that are on the podcast today, this is probably a first for you, isn't it?
It is a first.
Hey, finally, Chris has gotten generous with all you folks out there.
So since you were kind of the father of all things Grow, and this is called the Grow Leader Podcast, and we really do believe that people have potential greater than they're realizing today.
No doubt.
What would be the number one thing you would tell a pastor if they're at a level, but they really believe in their heart, like we do, that they can grow to higher levels of growth, not only personally, but in their church? And then we think it's important that it's actually numeric, it's measurable.
Of course.
What would be the number one thing you would tell a pastor or even a business leader that's listening if they wanted to grow to their leadership potential? What's the secret?
Well, you have to be intentional. You have to every day take the area where you're strong. What I tell people all the time is, just because you read doesn't mean you're growing. Just because you have knowledge doesn't mean you're growing. What you have to do is you have to find out what your strengths are, what your gifts are, and you have to grow in that area. And the growth means that you not only have to read or listen to podcasts like this, get information, but then you have to be intentional in taking that information and practicing it. And I just tell people, start practicing what you're learning. In fact, if you've learned it, if you haven't practiced it, it really has very little value in return to you. So I tell people all the time, find your strength, be intentional in your growth, get good information, but take it and you have to apply. There is no success without action. I've just never met anybody that said, we've been very successful. We haven't done anything, we haven't taken any action, but life is great. No, you have to take action. So I tell people all the time, find your strength, get the material in that area, learn it, practice it, and you'll start growing.
So, obviously, reading is a part of that, and you're an author. Obviously, you believe in delivering content through books. What's the two questions? What's the best book that you've written that would answer that question? And then, secondly, what's a great book that you've read recently? I get asked that all the time. What books am I reading right now? So, answer those two questions first. what's the best book that answers the growth potential
Yes, sure.
question that you've written?
Well, the 15 Laws of Growth, no question. That book sold well over 1 million copies. It just continues to sell because it basically, if you want to develop a personal growth plan and want to understand how growth happens, the 15 Laws of Growth, no question about that. You know, a book I'm reading, I just started reading it, so I'm only about 60 pages in, but it's just fabulous. It's a book by a guy named Todd, and I can't remember what his last name, but you'll find this, calling Canoeing Up the Mountain. And it's about Lewis and Clark and the expedition.
Oh, wow.
And the thesis of the book, I'll tell you guys, this is huge. Okay, so I'm just on the front end. So it's like when you recommend a book, you kind of like to be at the back end, but it's good enough that I can say, and you ask me what I'm reading right now. Well, what I'm reading right now is this book. And basically he talks about the fact that when they got to the Rockies, when they got to the mountains, they thought on the other side they would see water. And all they ever saw was mountains, and how they had to adjust, and how
wow.
and it's all about when your vision isn't what you thought it was going to be. What are you going to do to make your life still a life that makes a difference in people's lives? I think it's just that's fabulous. It's a wonderful story. I've always liked Lewis and Clark and some of the things they did. So anyway, that's what I'm reading.
Well, I think I've told you what my favorite book of yours is, and then I want you to ask your question about your favorite leadership lesson from John. But I've told you for years my favorite book is Today Matters.
Yes.
And you've written a lot of books, 100, and it still is my favorite. It impacted me at a time in my life, and I recommend every one of you to go pick up a copy. But give the audience kind of the thesis and a few nuggets from that book.
Yeah, well, the thesis is very simple. The secret of your success is discovered in your daily agenda.
See, that's what I love about it right there.
It's just, if somebody says, well, help me kind of be successful in life, what we think matters. We think, okay, that's tomorrow. It's out there. So I want to be successful. In fact, they'll say, I want to be successful someday. And I look at them and say, I got an idea. Let's be successful today. Now, here's the miss. We confuse recognition of success with success, and it's not the same thing. Think of Highlands College. In fact, I get the privilege today to go and be with you and the students and hang with them for a while. But think of Highlands College. You have a graduation day where they get their diploma and, the candy and the gifts and the parties and, congratulations, you graduated. But that was recognizing success. They became a success the day they decided to go to college. They were a success already when they went to class, when they studied, when they took the test. You're already a success. What happens is you're a success for quite some time, and then one day it shows up. And Today Matters is all about the fact that if you're doing the right thing today, if you've got your priorities right and you're just going through those and practicing them, you're already a success. It's just a matter of time till it shows up. But I think we get recognition of success and what success really is kind of confused.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I don't think I ever shared this with you, Chris. But when I wrote the book Today Matters, it's the only book I wrote that when I finished it, I almost didn't turn in the manuscript.
Really?
And I'll tell you why. It was so simple that I thought, I don't know if I'm insulting people with this book because it's so simple. And so I sat down with Margaret and I explained. And she said, no, John, it's simple to you because that's what you have always done. Yes. And she said, don't take it for granted that they know this. So I did. I did turn it in, but I looked at that and I thought, when people say, what's the secret of success? There's really no secret to success except the fact that today matters. And I turned it in, and of course, it sold over 1 million copies, and it still continues to do well today. But the point being, I had done it so well, so long, and it was who I was. I think Today Matters, Intentional Living, and Change Your World, my newest book. I think those are the 3 books that have the most John Maxwell DNA. And it's kind of like you read that book, it's kind of, you got Maxwell.
Well, it's certainly the deposit you made in me. And other than our friendship and our partnership and my, the privilege I have to be a part of Equip and the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation and what you're doing around the world and all of that, John, I was a passionate, I could be fun fun kind of a guy, but didn't have the daily disciplines. And even the rule of 5,
Yes.
which
Huge.
I've done an entire sermon series on the rule of 5, just those principles. And take just 2 minutes to tell them about the rule of 5. But when people ask me, Chris, what have you done? And I have to give God all the glory for where I am. There's so much of what I'm doing that I know I didn't do. God has pushed me forward. I'm good, but not this good, kind of a thing. But what you taught me were the disciplines, and it's the question that I get asked all the time from pastors and leaders. What they want to know about my morning routine. They want to hear about how I live my life, how many days I spend in the office. And honestly, John, that's what you taught me. You taught me how to focus my life around some disciplines and around some things to do every day. Give them a little snippet. I told you were next, so sorry, Matt.
I'm happy to wait.
When I get my man in the room and I have all these people.
He just kind of pushing you aside. And he said, Matt.
There's a freight train at the table. I'm gonna step off the track. So
Yeah, well,
I'm good.
I'm so delighted to share it with my Grow Leader friends, my mentor, and I just, but give them a little snippet, because it could be an hour by itself, just a rule of 5.
Well, the rule of 5. In fact, I think that's in my future that's going to be a book. It's going to be a book. But the rule of 5 is just, think of again. Well, it's very similar to Today Matters. And it's about everyday essentials. And simply what I say is, if you had a tree in your backyard and you wanted to cut it down, if you took an axe and you went to that tree and every day you swung just 5 times at that tree, eventually that tree would fall down. And out of this little story, now I'm condensing it very quickly, but out of this little story, I talk about the 5 essentials. Number 1, you have to know what you want to accomplish. I want to cut the tree down. Number 2, you have to have the right tool. I go pick up an axe. Baseball bat's not going to work.
Right.
You can work as hard with a baseball bat as an axe, but the tree doesn't fall. Number 3, you got to stay focused. Number 4, you got to take action. And number 5, you have to be consistent. And I just love that, because everything, Matt, that I just gave a person is doable to every person. I don't know anybody that couldn't do those 5 things. So what I like about success and significance is we're not talking about something that only a few can accomplish. We're talking about something that everybody can accomplish. And so for me, because I'm an author, my rule of 5 is very simple. Every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, and every day I write.
Say those again.
Every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, every day I write. I mean, every day. I've already done it today. Every day. Because if I do those 5 things, those are the everyday essentials.
For you.
For me, yes, because I'm an author. Now, so somebody, hey, if you're not writing a book, you don't want to have those as your essentials.
Exactly.
And I'm glad you said that, because you have to find out. But let me say this. You have to know what your purpose is and what your gifts are. And one of the things I do is I just don't get distracted.
That's the key, folks.
I really don't. And because of that, honestly, I'm not like well-rounded. And a lot of people, they talk about things, and I really don't know much about it. And, I'll listen to them, and, that was good. But to be honest with you, it doesn't even interest me. Because I have my plate full on the things that count. And I just haven't had enough time to put a whole bunch of stuff that isn't going to give a return. I'm a major return person. Everything I do, all the energy I put in something, I'm always asking a very simple question: where's the return? And obviously, in this setting, where's the return for the kingdom? I mean,
exactly.
And so because of that, I have always had the ability, I think, to prioritize and focus very well, which has been a huge key to what we've been able to produce.
And that's been the secret to grow. What we taught people is focus on know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference through
4 things.
Through weekend services, small groups, a growth track, and a dream team, and something so simple, but the power is in the focus. Okay, Matt, I promised you.
Well, I want to ask about mentorship, because you're saying things that I'm sitting by John Maxwell. I'm hearing things that I've heard for years from Chris Hodges. My kids are hearing them from me. So that's the return on mentorship and what's happened in mentorship.
That's good.
And I'm telling you, an easier, a leader that's easy to follow is one who you know is still growing. And so I've watched you be beside John and John lean over and say things. And I know there's a mentorship happening. And there's a security that it takes from you to do that,
Right.
to welcome that. But where did that start? 20 years ago, decades ago, how does mentorship happen intentionally? And what are the questions we should be asking to people who we want to be mentored by when we start those
Well,
relationships?
let me answer that question because in the early days of Equip, Chris, as a very young pastor, started coming and going on trips with us.
Right.
And I watched him. I mean, we would have a group with us. It wasn't just Chris. It might be 20, 25 people.
Right.
And we'd go to different countries, and we were just launching Equip and doing what we were trying to do. And, you do it the best you can in the beginning. But Chris was there. And Chris was always asking questions. I mean, I would look at him and I'd say, not always to me, he'd be talking to somebody else. And I kept saying, he really wants to learn. He really wants to grow. He really wants to achieve something in his life. So what happened is Chris got out of the pile. There's a whole pile of people in there, anything. And then, it's Jack Welch. This is a Jack Welch kind of an example. But then one person pops their head up and you say, oh, I see that person. He popped his head. And so then all of a sudden I started migrating toward him. And so I would have never probably ever mentored him if he wouldn't have put him in a position to be in the pile, and then he wouldn't have been able to, when he got in the pile, to get out of the pile. And all of a sudden, we began to connect, and the more we connected, I thought, my gosh, this kid's a future rock star. It's just, he just got to get a little time and a little mentoring under his belt. But that's really how the relationship began. It wasn't intentional at all. He was just, here, let me just say this. I think this is huge. Chris Hodges was intentional in being the best that he could become. So he was going to avail himself, Matt, of every situation, every experience, every person that he possibly could to do that. That's what got him out of the pile.
That's great.
Then when I started to pour into him, I saw he had more than questions. He had great giftedness. And is there a greater thrill? I mean, it's Lou Holtz who said, Lou Holtz told me one day at lunch, he said, John, I've coached good players and I've coached bad players. And he said, I just win more with good players.
Yeah.
I'm a better coach. Well, in mentoring, the mentor always likes to find a star and then pour into it.
And I think one of the things that I would encourage the audience with, I think too many proteges or mentees are waiting on the mentor to approach them.
Totally.
And I pursued you, and then when I did, and I think this is key for people to learn, even to this day, and you can tell them this is the truth, if I'm with you, I'm prepared to be with you.
Yeah.
So I'm not even waiting on you to speak in my life. I have a file of questions that I collect for the next time I'm going to be with John. Yeah. And so I'm ready.
You're always ready.
And so talk about that a little bit, just the relationship between the two.
Chris, I'm so glad you brought this up. And by the way, I'm excited about your podcast.
Thank you.
And I honestly, because you've been telling me about it, and so I promise you, as of today, I'm going to be like your podcast advocator. I'm just going to say, hey, listen, I'm telling you, because I'm not very technical, but however you're going to love this. However you get to him on this podcast, get to him, and because what I know about you is you're always going to put out great content. I'm not going to listen to you and come away empty. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to have, not only am I going to have knowledge, but I'm going to have application. I'm going to have a game plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is very exciting itself. Now that I've said that, you asked me a wonderful question. I can't remember what it was.
About the relationship between
yes. I got it.
Yeah,
I got it. Okay. Two things. No, there's three things. Preparation on the front end. And what Chris just talked about is so true. Whenever I'm with him, he's got a list of questions. He's always ready for me. That reminds me of what John Wooden said. When opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare.
Yep.
So get prepared on the front end. That's the front end. After the mentoring session, you have to have reflection. You got to pull away and you got to ask yourself, okay, what are the two or three things that I just have got to now begin to apply in my life? Then it takes action. Then you come away and say, now I'm going to do them. And my favorite mentoring responsibility, I remember one time I was, the first time I mentored and had any time with Courtney McBath. You know Courtney.
Yeah, sure.
Beautiful guy. And so when it was done, he left, and I hadn't heard from him a couple of months. And, every once in a while I think, I wonder how he's doing. And one day he called me on the phone. He said, could I have another 30 minutes of your time? And before I could say, well, what have you done with what I gave you last time? He said, let me tell you. When I was with you the last time, this is what you said. This is what I heard. This is what I did. Did I do it right? Can I ask some more questions? Bingo! Touchdown!
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, the answer is yes. He answered the question for me. And all I ever ask as a mentor is that the person that I'm pouring into maximize what I had. Now, let me just say one other thing about mentoring, and this is, to me, I understand it because I'm on the back end. But in mentoring a person and pouring your life into them, like Chris, you take what I give you and you make it better. You don't take what I give you and just do it. You take what I give and you make it better, and you're gifted, so you have that ability. But when I watch you do things that I poured into you, I look at you and say, I think Chris does that better than me. Oh my gosh. Wow. I wish I would have done it like that. And I think the reward of a mentor, honestly, is that you pour your life into people and it comes back to you better than what you gave it to them.
Yeah.
And you've done that, Chris, and that's why I love being with you so much. I never give you anything when you take off with it. I say, well, I'm going to watch him in a few months, and I'm going to learn from him, and it's going to be better. So it's not a one-way street. It's not top down. Really, our relationship is this way. It's just across the table from each other, learning from each other, challenging each other, growing together, doing ministry together. Right. It's a two-way street.
Well, I've come with a question.
Okay.
That I didn't prepare you for, and so you did not know this ahead of time. And I actually woke up early this morning, and I thought I'm gonna sit across the table with my mentor in front of an entire Grow Leader podcast audience. And there's an area that I need to grow that I'm going to ask you. I'm not good at this at all, and I actually this is a serious question that I'd love to grow in. People ask me all the time, what's the best thing about John Maxwell? And you would think it would be leadership or your speaking. You are the most present person I've ever met. You're 1,000 times busier than me, and it never feels like it. You can be so present in a room. My mind tends to go ahead to the next thing. If I'm honest with you, right now I'm thinking about the next thing that you and I are doing together. We're going to go to Highlands College, and you're
chapel.
You're going to speak at the chapel. Yeah, and that's. But I watched you when you even walked into the room today to greet the team. That's the incredible team, by the way. That's helping us with our podcast. You just stopped and shook their hand and asked their name, and I want to be better at that. This is the last question of the day, Matt, and I'll let you wrap it up. But mentor me right now. Just talk to me about how you can be so, you never look at your phone, you're busy. It's like, it's got to be more than a gift. It's got to be a choice.
No, it's intentional.
Okay, so talk.
But let me just say this. I'm going to do this, and I love you asking this question because we've not really talked about this. So this will be kind of like presence light because of the time. But you know what? The next time we're together, we'll really spend some time. Let me tell you, I'm working with Mark Cole on this because Mark is very much like you. He is constantly, while he's talking to somebody, he's thinking, what next? And that's basically how a leader thinks. A leader is always, so there's nothing wrong with, what does a leader do? Sees more than others see, and he sees before others see. Well, it's because he's thinking about it. So it's not that that's wrong. Don't miss this. It's just not best. In other words, for me to be best in the moment, I have to be intentional in forfeiting what's next.
Oh, wow.
And so it has to be intentional. I have to block out the rest of the day because the moment I have is the best moment I have. And so I've got to make the best moment I have the best moment I have. So what does that mean? That does mean that I stop and talk to people on the way in and say good morning to them. Because if I truly value people, then I have to show that in my life every day. And by the way, I not only value the podcast guys, Chris and Matt, but I value the camera people. And what I have learned is that people, the greatest gift you give people as a leader is full attention.
Wow.
And asking them their opinions. And so I constantly say, I want to give full attention. I want to ask opinions. So last night when we had our wonderful dinner with some of your key people in your congregation, I set that dinner. I asked questions, and we went around that room, and by the time I was done, in, 45 minutes, I really knew those people. What's interesting is, after our little Q&A, 3 of them came up to me and just said, thank you. And I said, well, thank you. And I'm thinking of the Q&A. They weren't thanking me for the Q&A. They were thanking me for being at the table and saying, now talk to me. Now, how do you do that? And it was that touch. And so, I just, I would say that part of it is in the fact that I value people greatly, but part of it is in the fact that I just understand. And by the way, I think if I take care of the moment, when I get to the next one, I'll take care of that too. It's not like I'm taking care of this moment and I'll slide on the next one. Right. So that's how I try to do it. And one more quick thing is, you've heard me talk about this, Chris, so this is not new to you, but it would be really great for the podcast people, then I'll shut up, I promise you. And that is, you can't be 100% all day. I mean, I can't start and be just full on all day. So I have to pick my spots. So what I do on my calendar is I look and I say, where do I have to be 100% today? I have to be 100% right now.
That's very good.
And so, but I don't have to be, I don't mean this unkindly, I don't have to be 100% at lunch. I can be about 40, 50%. And so what you do is you begin to intentionally, again, use your energy where it's going to have the greatest return.
That is so good. Wow.
Can I just say thank you so much, not only for being here with the Grow Leader podcast, but also for the investment you made in the Pastor Chris. If the Church of the Highlands staff had a grandfather, it's John Maxwell.
I'm honored.
We're so grateful for you.
I'm honored. Can I do this again?
Will you come back?
Huh?
I think the demand is going to be there.
Well, no, I just love hanging with you guys and love hanging with all your, and be sure to tell others about what this guy is doing. It's huge.
Absolutely. We will get Dr. Maxwell back. Be sure to like, share, comment wherever you are taking in the Grow Leader podcast. And we'll have everything you heard in the show notes today. We are excited about the bonus content we have coming out very soon. Dr. Maxwell's message. Go pick up any of his books. You heard several referenced today, but anytime you can pick up a John Maxwell book and read it, you'll be better for it. And then apply it. Don't just read it, apply it. And thanks for joining us today on the Grow Leader podcast. We'll see you next time.